At 11:47 p.m., my wife Elena texted me from somewhere she knew would hurt. "I'm at my ex's house. Don't be jealous." I stared at the message, expecting anger to rise. Instead, I felt something colder. We'd been married for 6 years, and Elena had always insisted that her ex, Marcus, was completely out of her life. Yet now she was sitting in his house late at night and casually telling me not to be jealous. I typed a response, erased it, then wrote one sentence: "I'm not jealous, I already told his wife everything." 3 dots appeared on my screen, then disappeared. Minutes later, Elena called me crying. She demanded to know what I'd told Marcus's wife. I reminded her that I'd discovered their messages 2 weeks earlier. Elena had insisted they were harmless. She said Marcus was simply an old friend who needed advice. But the messages told a different story. There were late-night conversations, secret meetings, and references to memories they had never shared with their spouses. I had confronted Elena once, and she promised there would be no more contact. So when she texted me from Marcus's house, I knew the promise had meant nothing. I had already contacted his wife, Rachel, and sent her the evidence I'd found. Elena kept crying on the phone. She said she hadn't expected me to involve Rachel. I asked why she thought Rachel deserved less honesty than I did. Elena said she and Marcus were only talking. I told her that wasn't the point. Married people can have friends, but secrecy changes everything. She admitted they'd been reconnecting emotionally for months. She said Marcus understood her in a way I didn't anymore. I asked whether she had gone to his house because she wanted to repair our marriage or because she wanted to see where things with him might lead. She couldn't answer. The next morning, Rachel called me. She sounded devastated but calm. She had received the messages and confronted Marcus. He admitted that he'd been emotionally involved with Elena. He claimed they hadn't planned to leave their marriages immediately, but they'd talked about what life together might look like. Rachel asked whether I knew about the relationship before she did. I told her I had suspected something but hadn't wanted to believe it. She thanked me for telling her. Neither of us felt victorious. There was nothing satisfying about discovering that 2 marriages were collapsing at the same time. Elena came home the following afternoon. She expected me to be furious. Instead, I asked her one question. "If I hadn't told Rachel, how long were you planning to keep lying?" She started crying. She admitted she didn't know. She said she'd been trapped between the life she'd built with me and the excitement of reconnecting with Marcus. I told her that wasn't being trapped. It was refusing to make a decision while expecting both men to remain available. She said she still loved me. I replied that love without honesty had become meaningless. I moved into the guest room that night. Elena begged me not to leave. She said the relationship with Marcus had never become physical. I told her I believed her, but emotional betrayal was still betrayal. She had shared parts of herself with another man while deliberately hiding them from me. She asked whether I had sent Rachel the messages because I wanted revenge. I said no. I had sent them because I believed she deserved to know what was happening inside her own marriage. Elena looked down and whispered, "I wish you had just yelled at me instead." I told her yelling wouldn't change anything. The truth was already painful enough. I contacted an attorney and began discussing separation. Elena was shocked. She thought because I hadn't screamed, I wasn't seriously hurt. I explained that sometimes the quietest decisions are the most final. I wasn't interested in punishing her. I wanted to protect myself from becoming someone who constantly questioned where his wife was and who she was talking to. Trust had been damaged too deeply for me to simply pretend it could return overnight. Marcus and Rachel eventually separated as well. Elena and I remained apart for several months. During that time, she began counseling and finally admitted that she'd been unhappy in our marriage for a long time. I told her I wished she'd said that before building a secret emotional relationship. She agreed. We both recognized that we'd stopped communicating years earlier. But recognizing our marital problems didn't erase her responsibility for the choices she'd made. I could accept my own failures without accepting blame for hers. One evening, Elena asked whether I hated her. I told her I didn't. She looked surprised. I said hatred would only keep me tied to the past. I wanted to remember our marriage honestly, the good parts and the painful ones, without turning either of us into a villain. She asked whether I could ever forgive her. I told her forgiveness would take time. But forgiveness didn't necessarily mean reconciliation. Sometimes you forgive someone because you don't want anger to become the final thing you carry from the relationship. Months later, Elena asked me to meet at the cafe where we'd had our first date. She said she'd ended all contact with Marcus and wanted another chance. She admitted she'd mistaken familiarity for love and excitement for compatibility. I listened carefully. I still loved her, but I wasn't willing to return to the marriage we had before. I told her that if we ever tried again, it would require counseling, transparency, and patience. She agreed. We began slowly, without pretending the past hadn't happened. Our marriage eventually survived, but the message from that night remained a turning point. Elena had written, "I'm at my ex's house. Don't be jealous." She expected jealousy. She expected an argument. Instead, I gave her one sentence. "I'm not jealous. I already told his wife everything." She broke down because she realized the secret wasn't hers anymore. I hadn't threatened her. I hadn't insulted her. I simply removed the protection that secrecy had given her. Sometimes the most powerful response isn't anger. It's the truth, delivered calmly enough that nobody can pretend they didn't hear it.